Speaking of boyfriends, we all know that Chris and I are actually secretly boyfriends. Aside from being podcast co-hosts and very good friends, he is also my boyfriend, okay? It's out in the open now. I'm done hiding it. I'm done suppressing our love, okay? We are done being star-crossed lovers. Is that what that's called? Star-crossed lovers, when you like have to hide it for socio-political reasons or something? Anyways, there is a third member of our polycule who is also a boyfriend of mine, and his name is Noah Samsen. And Noah Samsen is the first large YouTuber to actually ever support me on my main channel, on my Overzealots channel. He's the first large YouTuber to ever do that. Noah is a very nice guy. He's a very nice guy. I know a lot of people throw that nice guy trope at him, and they throw it at me too, but let's be real. I can be very mean if I need to be. If I think someone is an appropriate target, I can kind of switch that off and be an asshole. Noah is genuinely a very nice guy. It's funny because you'll see all these stupid fucking slop tubers like what's that guy's name? Think while you sleep. Complete fucking moron. But he'll have all these videos like, oh, look this fake nice guy. He's a fake nice guy. Brother, you don't know anything about the dude, first and foremost. Noah actually is a nice guy. I say all of this to say, when I'm touching on a topic pertaining to a friend or involving a friend like Noah, I'm going to be biased. I'm just going to be biased because he's a friend. He's been very nice to me. He's been on my podcast many times. We keep in touch through private channels. Great dude. With that said, I don't think being biased towards something necessarily makes what you're about to say inaccurate. I'm biased against you attacking my mother, but I would still be able to substantiate that argument with legal reasons, moral reasons, but I would still be biased. So my bias in that instance obviously doesn't color my prescription to the point where it's inaccurate. So the same would hold true with Noah. He's a friend, but everything I'm about to say pertaining to his issue with Ethan Klein is still going to be accurate. So the reason I say all of that is Noah Samsen, over the past, I guess close to a year now, has been dealing with what originated as legal threats against him by the Zionist YouTuber Ethan Klein, and has eventually metastasized into an actual lawsuit against Noah by the Zionist YouTuber Ethan Klein. So for the past year, he's been dealing with that, some variation, either legal threats or an actual lawsuit. Ethan did end up bringing a lawsuit against him, and Noah had to fight it. He did a live stream. He invited a bunch of his friends on. I was on there too with Chris, and we raised some money for his legal defense, and the goal was, if he didn't use all of the money for the legal defense, he would donate it to Palestine. So fast forward to now, I think yesterday, Noah Samsen drops a video called Ethan Klein Lawsuit Update Dismissed, meaning the lawsuit is over. Ethan dropped the lawsuit. So we're going to get into it. Without further ado, let's watch what Noah released yesterday, and we can talk about it as we go.
Hey everybody, I've got a big lawsuit update for you. It's over. Ethan Klein has dropped his defamation lawsuit against me. He filed a motion to dismiss the case with prejudice, meaning that he cannot sue me for the claims in this lawsuit ever again. It's over. We won. I mean, kind of. We didn't really win anything. In fact, I actually lost like a bunch of time and money and peace of mind and all that, but I am no longer.
I think it's safe to say that that was Ethan's actual goal, right? It seems like Ethan just wanted to drain all of Noah's resources and time, and fundamentally that's why he did it. He was upset that Noah criticized him on reasonable grounds, on, I would say, more than reasonable grounds, because I agree with Noah's criticisms. But Ethan just couldn't contend with what Noah was saying. He couldn't contend with, say, the historicity of the argument Noah was levying his way. He couldn't contend with the fact that Noah, a relatively large YouTuber with over 500,000 subscribers, put out a video that accrued, I think, over 1 million views. And in that video, he was pointing out the fact that Ethan Klein holds water for a genocidal state. Ethan didn't want to actually contend with any of this in, like, say, a back and forth with Noah. He just wanted to litigate it. He wanted to set this precedent where if you're a YouTuber or a creator who has a genuine critique of Ethan's behavior, of his Zionism, he wanted to create an atmosphere where a person like that would be scared to levy that critique. And for a short period of time, I think Ethan was succeeding in that. There were people who felt as though their speech had been chilled. There were times when, Noah would come on my podcast and we had to purposefully avoid the topic for legal reasons. That is what Ethan wanted the whole time. That's what he wanted the whole time. He just didn't want people fucking not even talking shit, really, because all they're doing is saying, yeah, Ethan Klein said this, this, and this. He's a Zionist. Here are actual clips of Ethan Klein doing all of this shit. It's very hard to refute when you fucking put a clip of Ethan Klein saying the thing you're saying he's saying. And I guess Ethan just didn't want to do that. He didn't want to deal with that anymore. So he thought, I'm incredibly wealthy. I'm going to drain these people financially.
Longer being sued, so I guess we'll take it. This lawsuit and the legal threats leading up to it have been a massive year-long headache. I'm super glad that it's over. I can get back to just focusing on videos, and we also get to donate the money we raised for my legal defense, which after subtracting the fees should still be about $100,000. So the first question you might have here is, what happened? Why did Ethan drop the lawsuit? And right now, I don't have a firm answer for that. Ethan hasn't commented publicly and did not respond to my requests for comment, but now that it's been dropped with prejudice and with no confidentiality clauses, I'm able to talk openly about everything that happened, and I think by the end of the video, we should have a little bit more of an idea as to how this all played out the way that it did. So first, a brief recap. In March,
before we get into this, it is kind of important to drive home the fact that Ethan dropped this with prejudice, meaning he can't ever refile for the same lawsuit, the same claims within this lawsuit. And if you have seen Ethan's complaint against Noah Samsen, it is genuinely ridiculous. Chris and I went over it on a podcast episode, but it is unhinged. This image right here of Ethan Klein is pulled directly from Ethan Klein's thumbnail for Content Nuke Hassan Piker, that Ethan Klein video. Noah pulled this image from Ethan Klein's own thumbnail and transposed it here. And Ethan Klein, in the complaint against Noah Samsen, alleged that this was defamatory because Noah photoshopped Ethan doing a Nazi salute over a destroyed Gaza. That is what the complaint says. So it very clearly wasn't ever meant to be serious, and that's actually just a full lie. Ethan has no reason for not recognizing that this is his own image. So he's lying. That was what the complaint amounted to. He even tried to litigate weird historical conversations in the complaint. For example, when it came to, I don't know why this is relevant to a defamation case, but when it came to the plight of Algerian Jews, Ethan Klein, in his complaint against Noah Samsen, made the argument that the Premier Decree, which he called the Premier Degree with a G, it's decree, he made the argument that that decree did not give Jewish Algerians special privileges, when it absolutely did. You could just fact check this. It gave Jewish citizens of Algeria French citizenship, and it subjugated the other groups of Algerians, Muslims, Berbers, Arabs. So it's just strange. Ethan's complaint against Noah Samsen was riddled with outright lies, like claiming Noah photoshopped this to make Ethan look like he was doing a Nazi salute, when this is Ethan's own image from his own thumbnail, and just straight up lies about, or historical inaccuracies about, Algeria, Iraq, all of this crazy shit that ultimately, even if it was accurate what Ethan put forth, which it wasn't, again, he couldn't even fucking spell Premier Decree right, he spelled it with a G. But even if it was all right, what does that have to do with a defamation case? Defamation is when you say something that you know is wrong, inaccurate, untrue, and you knowingly say it, you knowingly tell that lie to disparage someone. You have to be able to prove damages. It's just completely different than having a debate pertaining to historical intricacies and details. That's a different thing. And Ethan knows that's a different thing, but again, his whole point here was to just make Noah have to fight a legal battle and hopefully eventually drain Noah's resources, maybe drain his will to fight, and bully him into a settlement. That is what Ethan always ever wanted to do. That's what he did with Casey-tron. That's what he tried to do with Denims, who won. Denims was actually on our podcast. We filmed it 2 days ago. I'm just kind of sitting on the episode because I'm touching up the editing and stuff, but look out for that. I think next week it should be out. Anyway, his goal here is to just use the fact that he's extraordinarily wealthy to bully people who criticize him. It's strange because I've criticized Ethan many times. I've been on his story, his Instagram story many times. He avoids me like the plague. So, I mean, not to get too fucking high on myself, but Ethan, if you do for some reason happen to watch this, or if someone sends this to him, the invitation stands. You are an ethno-supremacist, Jewish supremacist, Zionist, racist piece of shit, and I can substantiate all of those arguments, and I will debate you live. I would love to do it, but he won't do it because he's a pussy and he knows I'm actually a little too well read on this topic for him, to put it lightly and not come off too cocky. It's funny because my podcast episode, No Politic Here, was actually cited in Ethan's complaint against Noah Samsen. It's one of the footnotes. It's one of the sources.
So first, a brief recap. In March of last year, I released this video, The YouTubers Who Backed a Genocide. It was a response to a video from Ethan Klein called Content Nuke Hassan.
There you go. Look, this is Ethan's image. This is Noah's image. Noah pulled Ethan's image, and because Noah pulled Ethan's image, Ethan alleged that Noah was defaming him by photoshopping Ethan doing a Nazi salute. But it's Ethan's fucking image. It's crazy, and that was in the complaint. So obviously, this is Ethan maliciously using the legal system, because how could you possibly not know that it's your fucking video? Crazy.
on Piker. In that video, I highlighted a bunch of statements from several prominent content creators and used those statements to demonstrate the way that the Western media apparatus has helped to normalize Israel's genocide in Gaza. Things like atrocity propaganda, misinformation about groups resisting Israel, and Zionist historical narratives. Ethan Klein responded to the video by immediately threatening to sue me for defamation. He issued a cease and desist and demanded that I take the video down and apologize.
Just for the record, it's incredibly reasonable for Noah to hold the position that Ethan Klein partakes in apologia for a state committing genocide. That's a very reasonable position for Noah to hold. It's a fine political opinion to hold as a starting point. You can debate that premise if you choose to, but Noah isn't being defamatory by virtue of holding that position. I've made that exact point before, and I hold that position. I've made this comment before. But if Ethan, who openly acknowledges that Israel is committing a genocide, but then proceeds to present right-wing narratives such as the Nakba was caused by Arab leaders who told Palestinians to flee, something that even prominent liberal Zionist thought leaders in Israel refute, and the Nakba actually displaced more Jews than Palestinians, something Ethan said in his content nuke, and the fucking Arabs created Zionists in the MENA region because they're anti-Semitic, or the Palestinians can't outnumber the Jews or else the Jews are toast. I'm paraphrasing him here. I'm sorry, Ethan, but at the moment, we have a glimpse at what happens in Israel when the Israelis outnumber the Palestinians, and it's the genocide that he fears might happen in the event of basic democratic principles being brought to the land. So if Ethan is going to make all of these right-wing, ranging from right-wing to even far-right Zionist talking points, is it not fair to say, well, hold on, Ethan, you're defending this state by engaging in right-wing talking points for it on its behalf, while simultaneously saying that it's doing genocide. You can make that conclusion. You can hold the position that Ethan Klein is defending genocide because he admits the state is doing genocide and then he goes on to defend it. You can make that position. If I was to say, all right, like I concede that the Holocaust is a genocide, the Holocaust is horrible, which I obviously do, everybody here does, but then I go on to, as Germany is committing it, defend it by using like Nazi logic and Nazi arguments to defend it. And then someone said, you're kind of doing like Holocaust denialism right now. Would I sue that person? Or is that a decent political position to hold? What is my behavior leading up to that? What is my behavior that is eliciting that accusation? Yeah, I see you guys in the chat. Yes, Ethan Klein did promote the GHF, which is like a US-Israeli death trap. They basically, what they did was they got rid of the UN network for distributing aid, which was doing a relatively decent job, like it was getting aid where it needed to be. It undermined that system, that vast system of aid distribution sites, and replaced it with only a handful of GHF sites, which were patrolled by IDF members. It was a collusion effort between the Americans and the Israelis, and countless Palestinians were gunned down waiting for aid in those vicinities. And Ethan Klein was promoting that. If Ethan's digital footprint is that he's openly admitting Israel is doing genocide while defending it to high heavens, it's not defamation to hold the position that Noah holds.
Or else he would sue me. He dedicated a few episodes of his podcast to issuing these sorts of threats.
All he has to do to avoid getting sued is apologize for everything he said and did. He started his second video by saying, Ethan's threatened to sue me. It's not a threat. I'm going to sue you. Noah said in his second video, Ethan's threatening to sue me. Have fun with that, I guess. He said, well, I'm about to have fun with it. And unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be having much fun.
We can see that this is just a bully, right? Like he's just bullying people here. This is bully behavior. Why not contend with the actual argument? Why not invite Noah onto the show? I'm sure Noah would go on. Fuck, I'll go on his behalf, but I'm sure Noah would go on and just talk about this prior to the lawsuit, obviously, like I'm speaking back, past tense. But why initiate all of this legal hostilities and trying to drain the fucking guy for all he's worth because he criticized you? It just makes you look like a huge pussy.
Fun with it.
But I kept the video up. After speaking with several lawyers, I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to defend against a defamation suit. And I also believe that the cease and desist was just a scare tactic, as they're commonly used to get me to delete my criticism from the internet.
Yeah, it obviously is. I spoke about this in a earlier live stream, but there's like Ethan Klein fans now who are sending out fake cease and desists to creators who criticize him. Like my co-host, Chris Kunzler, my boyfriend, Chris Kunzler. He received a fake cease and desist, an email from a person who purported to be a real lawyer, and that lawyer did exist. But the email that sent it was like Proton Mail, some like encrypted email. And Chris reached out to the firm that the lawyer purported to be from, because again, it was a real lawyer. And the firm said, no, we're not handling this case. This case actually doesn't exist here. So some Ethan Klein fans are just fucking sending creators fake cease and desists. I know another creator who this happened to, but I'm not at liberty to disclose who that is. So it's just weird. It's just a testament to the space that Ethan and Ethan's behavior has fostered, culminating in this behavior, this outrageous behavior where you think, oh, this creator just criticized my fucking daddy. And instead of attacking the criticisms on their merits, I'm just going to try and scare this person on behalf of my favorite streamer so maybe they stop criticizing him. It's crazy. I know Ethan didn't tell these people to do that. I don't think he did that. But again, it's just a testament to the environment that you foster. Like if the people who supported me and watched me were out here sending fake cease and desists to creators who criticized me, at the very least, I would deem that a cause for introspection. I would think, what have I done to give these people the green light or the perceived green light that they could engage in this behavior? Fans of creators, they do shit that the creators should not be held responsible for. Obviously, you cannot control what your fans are doing. But that argument starts to fall short when you are engaging in the exact same behavior that your audience then chooses to partake in. It's not like Ethan is setting the precedent saying, well, this is reprehensible behavior, I'm not going to do this. He is doing something, and his audience is just fucking copying him. It's crazy.
The deadline passed, and I didn't hear anything from Ethan, and it seemed like everything was good. But then, a year later, 2 days before the statute of limitations was up, Ethan actually filed the lawsuit. He alleged that I defamed him with 6 statements, including the title and thumbnail of my video, and various other claims that I made. He was seeking unlimited damages and a jury trial. When you get served a defamation lawsuit, you have 30 days to respond or face default. So I spent the majority of my time the next few weeks looking everywhere to find a lawyer just to file a reply. I was being quoted upwards of $100,000, which is obviously...
That's obviously Ethan's goal, right? He knows smaller creators aren't going to have access to all of the resources that Ethan has the access to. So he just knows, okay, instead of contending with the arguments these people are making, I'm just going to fucking sue them and financially wreck them.
Pretty stressful because I don't have that kind of money on hand. So I ended up doing a fundraiser, and I fundraised as much as I could. We got not quite to the goal, but over $100,000, which I thought was pretty good. But as the deadline approached and I started to get even more stressed out, I still hadn't found a lawyer. That's when I got in touch with Deborah Drews. Deborah Drews is an LA-based attorney who specializes in defamation.
Everybody say thank you, Deborah. The GOAT, Deborah.
Law. And honestly, I owe her my life. She's an incredible lawyer, and from our first conversation, she showed genuine interest in this case. She was also willing to work at a major discount, which is what made it possible to donate most of this money that we raised. So anyways, I retained Deborah's counsel, of course, and we began working on our response. Our approach was going to be to file an anti-SLAPP motion. The SLAPP in anti-SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation, and the statute was designed to prevent powerful people from weaponizing their resources to silence dissent from critics that cannot sustain a long-term legal battle. A successful anti-SLAPP motion can dismiss...
Do you guys remember when Ethan was briefly flirting with suing iDubbbz? I think he actually did try to sue him and then he called it off. But one of the reasons he said he was going to sue iDubbbz for showing something that Destiny said. But again, one of the reasons he said he was going to sue iDubbbz was because he was in Canada now, and Canada doesn't have these SLAPP protections to the same degree that America does. So Ethan saying that back then is literally an admission. He's admitting that if that case was to be brought in an American court, it would be considered a SLAPP suit. But since iDubbbz is in Canada, then he can get away with this fucking vexatious litigation.
Frivolous lawsuits before they even go to trial and force the plaintiff, in this case it would be Ethan, to pay the defendant's legal fees. As our work on the case progressed, we started to feel like we put together a pretty strong case. But then, just a few days before the filing deadline, Ethan Klein reached out to us looking to open up settlement talks. Now at first,
So obviously Ethan knew that Noah was going to try and get an anti-SLAPP passed. And he knew that if that happened, he would on paper formally lose this lawsuit. And Ethan couldn't let that happen. So what he had to do instead was try and weasel his way out of it and say, hey, Noah, let's settle. Let's just settle. Because he knew that Noah would win this suit. Ethan knew this. This is coming off the tail of Ethan losing to Denims. This is coming off the tail of large YouTubers now throwing their hat in the ring like Fantano and Moist Critical. So Ethan is very obviously at this point looking for a way out. He knows that Noah is about to pursue an anti-SLAPP, and he knows that if that happens, he will formally lose the lawsuit. And he just can't do that. He's too much of an egotistical baby. He doesn't want that to happen. So he comes begging, oh, please, Noah, let's fucking settle. And then when you guys see what the settlement terms were, it's ridiculous. It's so funny because some people were framing this, as we will go over later when we look at Ethan's subreddit, but some people were framing this as though this is actually Ethan being the bigger person. And Ethan is such a kind and generous person. Oh, these quote unquote snarkers. They're mad when Ethan's suing Noah, and they're mad when Ethan's not suing Noah. You can't please these people. Just wait. Just wait until this video progresses, and you tell me if Ethan's settlement terms, what he pursued in the settlement terms, paints the picture of a person who is just trying to be the better person and trying to do what's right out of the goodness of his heart. You tell me.
I was taken aback. Ethan sued me, made me pay a bunch of money, stressed out me and my family, and now he's coming to me to settle? No, we're not doing that. That's not happening, especially given how strong we felt our defense was. But Deborah, in her infinite wisdom and expertise, suggested that we didn't know what their terms would be. Maybe they really wanted out of the lawsuit, and maybe their offer would reflect this, and it could be good for us. A settlement would end proceedings immediately, it would eliminate all risk, and it would free up the money that we'd raised to be donated right away. Depending on the specifics, that could be a pretty good deal. So we agreed to file an extension to start settlement talks, but nothing could have prepared me for what they came up with. In exchange for dropping his lawsuit, Ethan Klein wanted a public apology on my primary YouTube channel and Twitter account, pre-approved by Ethan, which would need to include a claim that he and his wife Hila have both supported the Palestinian cause. He also...
This is someone who's doing this out of the goodness of their heart? Really? then why include this clause? Why include this in the settlement terms that Noah has to just lie to his audience and say, actually, this guy who is very clearly a fucking bloodthirsty Zionist actually really supports the Palestinian cause? If I was Ethan and I supported the Palestinian cause, I would just openly and proudly support the Palestinian cause without engaging in right-wing Zionist narratives like the aforementioned ones. I would not have to bribe the people who I am suing to make that admission and try and paint me in a positive light, when I could just load up my fucking podcast that has millions of subscribers and do an episode on Palestine. Invite a Palestinian who's not a token Palestinian who works for the fucking Atlantic Council like Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib. Invite a Palestinian who actually disagrees with the Zionist narrative, which is the majority of them, by the way. Invite one of them on and have a fucking discussion. Invite a historian on to talk about Palestine. Fuck, man, my podcast is small. And I had a historian on. We had Zachary Foster on, and he spoke to us about Palestine. Ethan Klein has the ability to get these guests. And what does he do instead? No, he doesn't. He gets Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib. He gets fucking Loner Box. He gets fucking that guy from 90 Day Fiancé, the Pahlavist. Brother, you could probably get Avi Shlaim if you wanted, right? Like, Ethan has misquoted Avi Shlaim in the past and pretended that Avi Shlaim's work actually is in line with Ethan's perspective when it's diametrically opposed. Like, do you guys remember in the Hassan debate, Ethan was fucking saying, yeah, Avi Shlaim, Three Worlds. I read that book and it actually agrees with me. And then you open up that book and it disagrees with him. Ethan could have just had Avi Shlaim on. It's crazy. At least tried to, but he doesn't want to. This is why he has to stoop to this level where he has to be like, I will not financially ruin you if you tell everyone I actually support the Palestinian cause. Instead of just fucking supporting the Palestinian cause, you could do that, bro. You have a fucking podcast with millions of subscribers. You could just do it. Ethan could reach out to historians. Ethan could reach out to people who are well-versed on Palestine and actually hold anti-Zionist positions. Like, if he's going to invite Lonerbox on, why not just invite a contemporary who holds the opposing views to talk about the other side of the issue, if he really wants to do that both sidesy shit? But he doesn't. He won't even do that. He won't even do the liberal both sidesy shit. Like, here's the pro-Israel argument and here's the pro-Palestine argument. He just has liberal Zionists on.
Also wanted me to remove 6 separate videos from my YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure it's all the videos I've ever talked about him in.
Hey bro, I won't sue you if you scrub every criticism you made of me and tell your supporters I actually love Palestine.
Includes several videos that are unrelated to the claims made in the actual lawsuit. He also wanted a non-disparagement clause, which would bar me from ever publicly criticizing Ethan again. They did include a potential provision to reimburse my legal fees to be donated to a mutually agreed upon charity, so that's great, but only if my public apology included an acknowledgement that Ethan replenished these funds so that they can go to charity. So these...
Hey bro, I actually love Palestinians and I love the Palestinian cause, but I also won't sue you if you tell everybody how much I love the Palestinian cause and if you tell everybody that I sent a whole bunch of money to Palestine. Just fucking do it if you want to do it. If it's truly out of the goodness of your heart, just fucking do it. God damn, like, I don't tell you guys what I'm fucking donating to because it's not your business.
These terms were, let's just call them inadequate, hard for us to accept, so we made a counteroffer. No apology, no confidentiality, full reimbursement for all of our legal fees, no deleting any videos outside of the ones which were about the lawsuit, which we felt would become irrelevant if it was settled, and then one public statement which would read as follows.
That's so base. Noah just fucking mogged him. Chad Noah mogs Virgin Ethan.
Ethan and I disagree about a video I made in response to his video Content Nuke Hassan Piker. He thinks my video says one thing, and I think it says another. Both of us believe that YouTube is a place for free expression, and recognize the right to criticize each other's views. So we've decided to end our dispute amicably. Keeping it out of court frees up funds to help families in Gaza right now. We sent these terms over and didn't hear back, so we prepared to file our anti-slap motion. It was all ready to go. I was kind of excited. Honestly, Deborah cooked. But then a few days later, Ethan filed the motion to dismiss with prejudice. And that was it. So back to that question of like what happened, why'd he back out? Because he hasn't publicly commented and he didn't respond to my request for comment, we can really only speculate. Maybe he did have a change of heart. Maybe he doesn't want to be the one that hands out lawsuits left and right to silence critics. And maybe if he were to admit this publicly and apologize for wasting my time and money and acting like a freak throughout the whole process, then maybe I'd believe that. But until then, I think there are more likely explanations. See, Ethan has stated publicly that his many lawsuits against smaller creators have damaged his reputation.
I don't want to be the fucking litigious asshole that's suing everybody. Like,
Then just don't be, bro. Like, then just don't be. It's crazy because all of this stems from Ethan's obsession with trying to portray his liberal Zionism as though it's anti-Zionism. And in the process of defending his liberal Zionism, he ends up feeding into right-wing Zionism, like when he parrots right-wing Zionist talking points, like the aforementioned Arab leaders told Palestinians to leave, and that's what caused the Nakba. That's a right-wing Zionist narrative. But his stubbornness in defending liberal Zionism at all costs has put him into a position where he ends up parroting right-wing talking points, because Zionism in all of its flavors and variations is an ethno-religious supremacist ideology. So if you're trying to defend what you perceive to be a liberal variant of that, inevitably you're going to start slipping and saying some outright fascist shit, because the fucking project is fascist in all of its variations. If you guys really want to know, if you guys want me to go into just what the fuck the difference is between the two major political blocs in Israel, the Labor and the Likud, the right and the, relative right and the left within the Israeli paradigm, it's not that fucking different. It's not that fucking different. For example, Labor came up with the Allen Plan back in 1967, and it pretty much has been the blueprint ever since for the Labor bloc of Israeli politics. This is back in 67. Israel would get to keep a substantial portion of the West Bank, excluding portions where there were massive Arab populations, and then those Palestinians that were excluded from what Israel got to keep of the West Bank would join some sort of confederation with Jordan, or would just be given Jordanian citizenship, or would remain stateless. And this was to make sure that Israel could retain the perks of occupation without ever having to see the creation of a Palestinian state between Israel and Jordan. So this plan has morphed and changed as time progressed, but the principle of never allowing for a genuinely sovereign Palestinian state remains. And the persistence against full annexation of the territories also remains, but for the sole reason that if Israel annexed the territories, there would be too many Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, and Israel's quote-unquote Jewish character would be undermined. Okay? That's the real reason liberal Zionists pretend to want a two-state solution. It's out of concerns for what they call the demographic problem, which means too many Arabs in Israel, which would formalize the apartheid that already exists and make it harder for Israel to appeal to liberal-minded people in the West who are their benefactors. The Likud mindset, on the other hand, is not actually that different, right? The Likud mindset has been to, quote, extend Israeli sovereignty over the territories. That's the phrasing Menachem Begin used to use. Both blocs within Israel, the Labor and the Likud, the right and the left, relative right and left, both blocs fundamentally reject Palestinian human rights and a Palestinian state and an end to Israeli apartheid. And there are many reasons for this, many of which are economic. Noam Chomsky, Fateful Triangle, he goes over all of this, and he goes over all of this in the 80s. Okay, little has changed since then. The occupied Palestinian territories serve as captive markets for Israeli goods, a source of unexploited water for Israel. Funnily enough, the other source of unexploited water the Israelis always point to is the Litani River in Lebanon. And where the fuck are the Israelis today? So, point being, there are many reasons why all forms of Zionists reject an equitable settlement. They're both cancerous, pernicious forms of an ethno-supremacist ideology. Just because Ethan opts for the liberal Zionist variant does not absolve him of his adherence to a genocidal ideology. If you guys really want to go into it, the peace process, the quote-unquote peace process that liberal Zionists will pretend really sped up at the end of the 1900s and the early 2000s. If you look at the actions of Ehud Barak, liberal dove Ehud Barak, who presided over the Camp David summit of 2000 and, is heralded as this guy who made a generous offer to the Palestinians. If you look at what that guy did, he colonized the West Bank 10 times faster than Netanyahu did, who served a 3-year term prior to him. Ehud Barak only served for 2 years, and the 3 years prior was Benjamin Netanyahu's first prime ministership. And he colonized the West Bank less aggressively than Ehud Barak did. Ehud Barak, who came to power in 1999, he came to power explicitly pretending to be a peace prime minister, okay? The international consensus for the peace settlement is Israel's withdrawal back to the 1967 borders, meaning to the borders that Israel had prior to launching the Six-Day War, and adherence to Security Council Resolution 242. That's the international consensus for the two-state solution, which is not something I fucking agree with. But regardless, that's the international consensus, okay? Israeli withdrawal to the pre-67 borders. What does Ehud Barak say in his opening speech in 1999 when he gets elected? He goes, under no circumstances will I withdraw to the pre-67 borders. So fundamentally, he negates the principle of the peace process in the international consensus in his first speech. And he's heralded as the peace prime minister? Really? That's the liberal labor guy. What's the difference, fundamentally? There's this old anecdote. It's recounted in Avi Shleim's book. It's called Israel and Palestine. But it goes over the mindset of a Palestinian man in the West Bank when he heard the news that Yitzhak Rabin took over from Yitzhak Shamir. Yitzhak Shamir, for those who don't know, is a right-wing Zionist. He was a Likud figure. He was actually part of the Stern Gang back in the day, which is a terrorist organization. But regardless, Yitzhak Rabin, heralded as another fucking peace dove in Israel, even though he's not, took over from Yitzhak Shamir. And do you know what the Palestinians in the West Bank thought? You see my shoes? I got one left, one right. I got 2 Yitzhaks. That was the anecdote. recounted in Avi Shlem's book, putting forth the idea that the people who actually have to put up with the Israeli occupation couldn't really care less. Their living conditions don't get any better. During the Oslo peace process, which again was overseen by Yitzhak Rabin, peace dove Yitzhak Rabin, the settlements, the Israeli settlements in the West Bank, nearly tripled. How is that improving the living conditions for the Palestinians who actually have to live under Israeli occupation? So when Ethan Klein claims to be pro-Palestine or anti-Zionist, but really all he's doing is being a liberal Zionist, that does not absolve him of anything, because liberal Zionists have been responsible for just as much bullshit as the right-wing Zionists. It wasn't until 1977 when the right-wing Zionists even came to power in Israel, meaning everything prior to that was done by the labor Zionists. The 1967 Six-Day War, the war of attrition, the diplomacy of attrition, as Avi Shlaim says, when Golda Meir was being an intransigent and refused any sort of peaceful settlement and persisted in her maintenance of the occupied territories, even though Nasser agreed to 247, Sadat agreed to 247. These are all labor Zionists who did all of that, by the way.
I know what people think of me. I know what people say about me. I'm not a moron. I know like the consequences of doing all these laws.
It's so crazy that he says he's not a moron and he knows all of the consequences of doing this, and then he just goes on and does it. It's so fucking crazy. Just don't do it. Nobody's forcing you to do it.
Lawsuits and stuff.
The biggest backlash so far came very recently when he was criticized by a prominent YouTuber, Charlie of the channel Penguin Zero. He criticized Ethan's lawsuits, and these videos got millions of views.
Ethan, of all people, should be very familiar with how defamatory lawsuits can be exploited by those with a lot of money. He was the guy that always fought on the right side of these kind of battles. And now in this case, I really think he's lost his way in that regard.
Ethan also...
So we all know that this is actually why Ethan dropped the lawsuits, right? Like the tides were turning, the walls were closing in, Noah was gearing up to pretty much win this with his anti-slap. Ethan needed a way out. He tried to present settlement terms that were comical, to be very kind. Noah rejected them, and then Ethan bitched out. That's what happened.
Also just lost a lawsuit against the streamer Denim.
And this, he just got mogged by my queen, Denims, who again just did an episode of No Politic here. It should be out next week. I'm still editing it, but it's a very good episode. I liked it a lot.
Copyright infringement, and the ruling on this one was just brutal. The judge ruled against Ethan while citing his own previous case of defending against a frivolous copyright lawsuit. It wasn't until both of these...
That's the most Curb Your Enthusiasm music moment I've ever seen, I think. That's so legendary. Has anyone made an edit yet with Ethan like winning that lawsuit back in the day and then having that lawsuit, the precedent from it, used against him today, and then fucking bum 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 ba-da ba-da ba-da. Has anybody done that yet?
These events that Ethan began offering to drop his defamation lawsuits in exchange for an apology, of course.
If Ian would issue a genuine apology,
It's fucking crazy that Rabin got murked for even the appearance of interest in peace. It's really funny because the rabbit hole for Rabin, it goes deep. So Rabin, I mean, during the first Intifada, he wasn't the prime minister, but he held an important position, and he issued the declaration for the IDF to break the bones of non-violent Palestinian protesters. He was a hawk. He was known to be a hawk, right? In his first prime ministership in the 70s, he was just not known as a peace dove, and that's actually why in the 90s, the Israeli public gave him the mandate to go through with the peace process, because they understood that he was not a dove. They thought he would be hard, he would hold firm, and he would not give up on their principal concerns. He would not compromise on that. That's actually why he was given the mandate in the 90s to go through with the peace process. You know how you know this? When Yitzhak Rabin took over from Yitzhak Shamir in, I believe, 92, there were already peace negotiations going through with Yitzhak Shamir's delegation. And what Rabin did was he kept Yitzhak Shamir's Likud figure as the head of those peace negotiations. So if you're a guy who is coming to power and saying, okay, I'm actually going to take the peace process seriously, I know the person I'm taking over from is a fucking ex-terrorist, intransigent piece of shit, but you know what, I'm actually going to keep the figure he selected, who is still a part of his party, as the head of delegations for peace talks with the Palestinians? Really? What about October 5th, 1995, when Yitzhak Rabin is addressing the Knesset, and he goes, he would give the Palestinians only something that is, quote, less than a state. Less than a state. That's not a fucking state. Again, the international consensus for the peace process at this time is for Israel to withdraw to the pre-67 borders and accept Security Council Resolution 242, work towards the implementation of that. That Security Council resolution was accepted by the PLO in 1988 in Algiers. Yasser Arafat accepted 242. 338, which is just pretty much a reiteration of 242. After the Yom Kippur War, the 338 asserted that the parties involved would work towards the implementation of 242. So it's pretty much the same thing. Anyway, Yitzhak Rabin, he wasn't interested in that. He was only interested in giving the Palestinians, quote, less than a state. And then during the Oslo process, He increased the settlements in the West Bank nearly threefold. How is this your fucking peace guy? It's crazy, bro.
I'd probably think about dropping the lawsuit. And honestly, the same is true of Noah Samsen. If he just issued like a heartfelt apology, I'd probably consider dropping it.
And there's another part to this that I think is worth discussing, which is how Ethan's reputation has also taken hits due to his support for Israel. According to him, this perception has ruined some of his personal and professional relationships.
From a professional perspective, our entire lives are ruined. Collaborations, partners, business partners, employees, creators, friends.
If you look at the trends in views and subscribers, there's been a demonstrable drop since October of 2023. Former fans of H3 are leaving and have spoken about the sort of rampant Zionism in that community. Apparently, even just wearing their merch now has an explicit association with the state of Israel. At one point, Ethan may have thought that suing me for criticizing his statements about Israel could change this public perception.
I'd love to see you reason out in a court document about how I and Mudahar support genocide. I really look forward to that.
But somewhere along the line, he must have realized that this strategy wouldn't work. When he got the chance to prove me wrong in front of a judge.
I mean, dude, like, it's just so fucking silly. We're content creators at the end of the day. We're fucking YouTubers. If you have a problem with another YouTuber and you have a massive ass platform and you're so confident that you are in the right and they are in the wrong, why don't you just invite them onto your show and discuss it? Or why not, even if you don't want to do that, why not just go back and forth and actually address the criticisms that your critic is making? Because when it comes to the video that Noah actually made against Ethan, it is full of substantive critiques. And even if Ethan doesn't think that there's substantive critiques, it is full of critiques. Ethan could just make an episode about it and go over it. You just go over it. Contend with it. Contend with the political arguments being levied against him. But he didn't want to do that because he knew that he is actually in the wrong here. He knows he is a liberal Zionist. He is a Jewish supremacist. He is an ethno-nationalist. Ethan Klein is on video saying that the Palestinians cannot outnumber the Jews. That's fucking crazy. That is fucking crazy. In no other context would we allow such a thing. We would never allow that sentiment to hold in any other context. And the only reason people let it slide in the context of Israel-Palestine is because they hold unchecked racist opinions about Arabs. They think they're barbaric. They think they're savages. They think that if equal rights, if democratic principles were brought to the land, then the Arabs would genocide the Jews. Sorry, we're in a position right now where there are no democratic principles in the land. The Jews outnumber the Arabs, and who's getting genocided and who's doing the genocide? So Ethan's entire argument is just inverting what is actually happening and dealing in counterfactuals, in hypotheticals. Why not just deal with what's actually happening right now? Arabs catching strays for no reason. Yeah, it's crazy because, I mean, look, no reasonable person would ever say that what Jews are facing in the MENA region is equivalent or even close to what Jews faced in Europe during the Holocaust. Nobody would ever make that claim. But in those countries, after the Holocaust passed, Jews were able to integrate and become a protected minority. So if you could make the argument that Jews are now protected minorities in Europe, which is a place far more anti-Semitic than the Middle East has ever been, if you can concede that point, why doesn't the same hold true for the Middle East? Why can't Jewish people become protected minorities in Palestine? The Arabs are nowhere near the Nazis. They never did the Holocaust. They don't even want to do something like the Holocaust. They have no aspirations to do that. But if Jews are able to become protected minorities in Europe, which is a place far more anti-Semitic than the Middle East, why can't they become protected minorities in a democratic Palestine now? It's just racism. We need to take the steps, obviously, to implement this peaceful solution, but they're not even trying to take those first steps. They're not even interested in it. They just shut it down with these hypotheticals of barbaric Arabs killing all of the Jews. You don't deal in what if, because that same argument for a very long time was made in South Africa. We can't have an end of apartheid here because the indigenous black population will kill us all. Look at what they're doing in Kenya. Look at the Mau Maus. Look at what's happening in Congo. We can't let that happen here because they're going to kill us if we bring equal rights to everyone. What ended up happening was apartheid crumbled largely because of, military pressure in the periphery. The proxy battle in Angola was a massive reason for the end of apartheid. The MPLA and, Cuban aid destroying the apartheid South African-backed forces and the apartheid South African army. That directly resulted in the end of South Africa's occupation of Namibia and the end of apartheid. That's Nelson Mandela's own assessment of the situation, by the way. He thinks that Cuba's aid to Angola and that overall battle, I think Cuito Cuanavale would be the one that was really the pivotal moment in the Angolan Civil War. He credits the South African defeat in that arena to be the reason why apartheid dissolved. So there was military pressure in the South African case. There was sanctions, global sanctions pressuring South Africa. And eventually, the white South Africans decided to give democracy a chance. And when that actually ended up happening, flaws and all, of course, because neoliberal apartheid persisted in the conception of Andy Clarno, who has a good book. It's called Neoliberal Apartheid. He talks about the economic plight post the end of political apartheid. But when that apartheid ended, the transitionary period was not ravaged by violence. It just wasn't. So if we can see that happen in South Africa, why can't we say the same for Palestine? Why can't we at least try? Because the alternative is this persistence of this status quo that is killing Palestinians en masse, subjecting them to occupation in the West Bank, full-blown genocide in Gaza. It's ridiculous. And the reason we allow for this to persist, this status quo to persist, is because we are plagued by these delusions that if we implement some sort of equitable democratic solution, then maybe a smidgen, a fucking fraction of what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians might happen to the Israelis. But we don't even know that. We don't even know that. And even if we could guarantee some sort of violent outbreak, that's still not a reason to allow for the persistence of the complete revocation of human rights of an entire group. That's not how that works.
Just like he wanted, he folded. He backed out at the last minute. So here we are.
Anyways, this video is done, but this segment is not done. I wanted to now go over the copious cope. I've never used those words in such close proximity, but they sound good together. I wanted to go over all of the cope pertaining to Noah Samsen and Ethan Klein. This page on Twitter, I always see it. It's always the most fucking like liberal slop, like fucking Destiny fan page. Always saying the stupidest shit. Doesn't know anything. Historically illiterate. They have thrown their hat in the ring yet again pertaining to the Noah Samsen, Ethan Klein debacle. And I mean, the cope is real. The cope is palpable. Black Cat Night Kitten says, if you're still not sold on the fact that we're in a new era of complete propaganda discourse, let this be your turning point. There's no good conversations anymore. You need to start spam calling people genocidal pedophiles, rapists. Sorry, Noah claimed that Ethan Klein supported a genocide because Ethan Klein quite literally holds water for a state that, by Ethan Klein's own admission, is committing genocide. He partakes in defending said state by levying right-wing Zionist narratives to defend it. Ethan Klein defends said state with right-wing genocidal Zionist narratives. It's not that hard to say, okay, this guy might be holding water for this genocidal state. You can hold that position. It's a completely acceptable political position to hold. I don't think Noah called Ethan a pedophile or a rapist. Maybe that must be just referring to someone else. If you can justify your use of those terms by any technicality, or frankly, in Noah's case, straight up false logic. Noah did not win by a technicality. It was a defamation case. Noah levied a political opinion that Ethan Klein holds water for a genocidal state, an opinion a lot of people share. And Ethan tried to sue Noah for defamation. And in the process of trying to make that case, he tried to litigate a bunch of historical bullshit like the Crimea Decree, bunch of random shit in this complaint. That's not what defamation is. Noah is allowed to hold a political opinion, and even if it's a wrong political opinion, it's not necessarily defamation. Defamation is when you knowingly say something false about someone and they can prove damages for it. This is not defamation. This is Noah saying, I've observed this person's behavior over a long period of time. He engages in right-wing narratives to defend a state that he admits does genocide. It's fair to say, okay, this guy might be defending this genocidal project because he's defending a genocidal project. Like, do people not know what the fuck defamation is? If it was defamation and Ethan genuinely thought it was defamation, why was he desperate to settle? And why did he drop the case with prejudice? Why? If you can justify your use of those terms by any technicality, or frankly in Noah's case, straight up false logic, what's the false logic? Elaborate, then you're good to go. They have no recourse, not in the culture nor in the US legal system. And this case study proves it's a winning strategy. This is just a bunch of fucking nothing. This is a huge nothing burger. Black Cat, if you really want to talk about this, you're free to call into the stream, big dog. You're free to call into the stream. We could talk about Israel, Palestine, the history. We can even talk about this, whatever you want, call in. This is the link that I wanted to start with, but I accidentally started with that moron. Anyways, so this is the H3 Productions subreddit, and you could only imagine the cope that is taking place in here, bro. It is fucking rough. So they post Noah's video, and the description reads, don't know if this is allowed because Noah Samsen is absolutely a snarker, but seems relevant. Noah says that Ethan dropped the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning he can't sue again for it. I'm not a lawyer and really don't know if Ethan could win or not, but I do think that dismissing it voluntarily with prejudice shows some goodwill, none of which is acknowledged by Noah or the commentators. So the new spin now, the new narrative push is that Ethan Klein is actually an enlightened new person, and he's always had this goodness in his heart, and he's decided to be the bigger person and just drop it with prejudice and relinquish all of his rights to ever rehash it because he's just such a good person. Now, let's just poke some simple holes in this. If Ethan was genuinely a good person, he wouldn't have done this in the first place. Second of all, if Ethan was genuinely interested in putting forth some goodwill and being the bigger man, why then, when it came to his settlement terms, did he require Noah to scrub all criticism of him, issue a statement that Ethan and Hila are actually super based pro-Palestine people, include a stipulation that stated that if Ethan dropped this and allocated the recuperated funds to a Palestinian charity or whatever, Noah would have to make that known to the public as opposed to just letting that be a good deed that happened in the background? Are these the requests of a person who is interested in putting forth some sort of goodwill and just being the bigger man? I don't think so. If Ethan was genuinely just trying to be the bigger man, he would have apologized to everyone involved, said, okay, I apologize for fucking wasting Denham's time, obviously, because she fucking won. He was just wrong. I know he's going to appeal it now. He's going to waste more of her fucking time. I apologize for wasting Noah's time. I apologize for bullying Casey Tron into fucking reading that hostage letter. And by the way, Noah exposing Ethan's settlement request kind of proves that Casey Tron was just reading a hostage letter, right? I mean, everybody already fucking knew that. But this just kind of shows, like, if Ethan has the ability to, in the back end, agree on a statement that needs to be read out by the person he's settling with, then obviously what he made Casey Tron say was his idea. Why the fuck would Casey Tron say, he's really cared about the Palestinian cause, and Hassan is a fucking asshole, and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, do you really think Casey Tron cared about that stuff? Why would she say that out of her own free will? She was coerced into doing that. I don't know why I gave Casey Tron a mocking voice when I'm actually mad at Ethan. My bad, my apologies. Right, Ethan made Casey Tron apologize to Asmongold too. Like, it's so obvious, bro. Why would Casey Tron, out of her own free will, decide to lambast Hassan, who she hitherto has not had serious issues with, apologize to Asmongold, who is a decrepit freak, say that Ethan Klein is actually a good voice for Palestine, and then lament the rise of anti-Semitism in the far left? That was in her apology statement. Do you really think she cooked that shit up herself? Or do you think this fucking moron cooked it up? Obviously, Ethan told her to say that shit, and Noah putting forth the settlement terms that Ethan proposed is kind of a testament to that. It's kind of proof that this is something Ethan does behind the scenes to acquire settlements. It's not out of the realm of possibility for Ethan to have requested all of those things be said by Casey Tron, because he requested similar things be said by Noah, and we have proof of that now. So this is a comment under this same post, and it's someone saying, I'm not gonna lie, fuck Noah. He shouldn't have dropped this one. However, I suspect the silver lining would be exposing Noah because I doubt he donates the money. It's just complete cope. Like, it's unsubstantiated cope. And actually, if you were familiar with Noah's previous work, Noah has already donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Palestine. He did a fundraiser last year where it was like, I think a week or 5 days of just nonstop streaming, and he raised like what, $500,000, and he donated that. Why would you think that this time around, for some reason, he's secretly gonna pocket the money? I mean, we have precedent to believe that when Noah does these fundraisers, everything is above ground and legitimate, and he does donate the money. He did it last time with a far greater sum of money. Why would he not do it this time? It's just assuming that Noah is like some random sneaky, money-hungry guy who's not actually committed to his principles, doesn't actually care about the Palestinian cause, and that's all just projection, because at the end of the day, Ethan Klein doesn't actually care about the Palestinian cause. If Ethan Klein, who, again, says that he cares about the Palestinian cause while being a Zionist, truly cared about the Palestinian cause, he wouldn't force someone in a legal settlement to promise, to tell everyone that Ethan Klein is donating a bunch of money to Palestine and he's actually super pro-Palestine and Hila is actually super pro-Palestine. Ethan wouldn't have to do that if he was just actually pro-Palestine, because it would become axiomatic. It's so uncharitable, like, especially because Noah just has already found himself in possession of a bunch of money that he fundraised last year, and he didn't do any sneaky business with that. He didn't pocket that. Why this time around would he refuse to donate the money? It's just stupid. It's unsubstantiated, stupid bullshit. It doesn't have any foundation. They're baseless claims. They're cope. They're cope. Copious cope. This is a sentiment that was actually really popular on this subreddit. So a lot of Ethan's fans are just kind of sick of this. They're done with it. Like, they're expressing that they are done. They're saying, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume Ethan intends to have a new era for the show by dropping everything and just getting back to the goofs. Maybe with Oliver's passing and the break, he did some introspection and decided that this was the best route for him. People are kind of going with this angle now and saying that, oh, well, Ethan Klein's friend passed away and this is like changing his mind or whatever, and that's why he's, you know, dropping the lawsuits and he wants to be a better person. That's bullshit. Ethan is realizing that he's backed against a corner. Charlie came out of the woodworks and lambasted him. Fantano came out of the woodworks and lambasted him. He lost his case to Denims. He lost his case to Noah. The walls are closing in, big dog. It's over. The jig is up. And Ethan is trying to maneuver this situation while maintaining as much pride and dignity as possible. But it's very hard to do that when you're an undignified piece of shit, right? It's just only a matter of time before your true colors come out. Everybody can see it now. The walls are closing in, buddy. Would be an exceptional decision that saves their show. Let's be honest. All these arguments, Hassan, Ian, etc., got so tiresome it made the show a chore to watch. He's just such a stubborn idiot, man. Like he can't realize, like, well, you know what it is? He got so many people who were only watching him now for this drama because a large portion of his audience became alienated by his Jewish supremacy and ethno-nationalism that they just kind of checked out. So then he was catering to like the Destiny Orbiters and the weird fucking psychopaths online. And that became his whole personality. And then like the dead enders, like these guys, like the last remaining people fighting in the trenches, even they were sick of it. And they're like, fuck man, like this show is becoming a chore. I went from a fan that hasn't skipped an episode in literal years to skipping many. I'm not using my free time to hear someone obsessively go on about petty personal arguments. No, this isn't snark. Dude, these people are so fucking brain broken. They can't even levy like a reasonable critique against this guy without being accused of being a snarker. What is a snarker? What is that? Like, maybe I'm too fucking old. Can you guys tell me in the chat what the fuck a snarker is? I went from never ever hearing this word ever to hearing it like all of the time whenever I have to deal with this fucking loser. No, this isn't snark. Due to the audience paranoia, I have to caveat that every freaking comment. I have to caveat that every freaking comment. Okay, it's a weird sentence structure. I'm a paid subscriber and I have been for a long time. I resumed watching the show as the personal vendetta slowly but surely faded, and as the show actually tried to be entertaining again. Change is not easy, but if Ethan really used Oliver's death to take a look at what the fuck he was doing, I admire that. Life is way too short. I don't, like, this is the narrative they're going with. Like, again, what happened to Oliver Tree was actually, like, that's fucking terrifying. That's so sad and horrible. And I'm never going to fucking speak ill about something like that happening. But I just don't think that this is the reason for Ethan's change in behavior. It's just not. If it was truly Ethan turning a new leaf and deciding to be a good person, he wouldn't fucking bribe Noah in the settlement talk to convince everyone that he's actually a super based pro-Palestinian activist and he donated a bunch of money to Palestine. He would just drop the suit, apologize, acknowledge he was wrong publicly, and donate to Palestine behind the scenes. Why does everybody need to know? And the fact that we have a paper trail of him trying to bribe someone into publicly telling their audience that Ethan is pro-Palestine and donating money to Palestinian charities is so crazy. It's such a reassuring thing to see because we all knew this guy didn't actually care about any of the things he was talking about really, other than his allegiance to ethno-nationalism in the form of Zionism. But he did not give a fuck about the Palestinian cause. And we knew that when he was bringing in, you know, his Palestinian token, Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib. We knew that then. If you care about the Palestinian cause, you don't invite in an Atlantic Council token who shares all of the Zionist positions, right? That's like me being like, you know what? I really care about the Palestinian cause, and we have a great podcast guest next episode. It's Abu Mazen of the Palestinian Authority. Like, no, what the fuck? That you're gonna hear the same things as if you were to hear any other like liberal Zionist. The Bill Burr episode was funny because it made Ethan hate himself. I actually just got put on to that Bill Burr episode. I learned about it fairly recently. It's a tough watch, man. It's a fucking tough watch. I guess because Ethan is just like a very insecure and not funny guy anyways. So when you're face to face with a real motherfucker like Bill Burr, it's intimidating, right? Like you might have that imposter syndrome because I guess Ethan fancies himself at least some sort of funny guy with like, you know, he's a funny entertainer guy. And then when you have a real funny entertainer guy like Bill Burr right in front of you, I guess you're forced to reckon with your just inferiority in that moment, and that could fuck people up. I hardly know anything about the Palestine-Israel conflict. Are there any books you recommend for me to educate myself? My friend, you are in the right chat for that. Yes. Nur Masala, Palestine: A 4,000-Year History is really good. Tom Segev has some really good books. Tom Segev, The Seventh Million. Tom Segev, The First Israelis. Avi Shlaim, The Iron Wall. Just keep in mind that when Avi Shlaim wrote The Iron Wall, you get the 2014 edition, but when he wrote that, he was a liberal Zionist at the time. He's no longer a liberal Zionist, but just keep in mind, that book despite being very useful at times and providing you with useful information, he was still a liberal Zionist, so there are shortcomings in it. Fateful Triangle by Noam Chomsky is really helpful. I mean, if you're looking for something really accessible and like you know nothing about the topic yet, A Very Short History of the Israel-Palestine Conflict by Ilan Pappé is like useful. If you're familiar with the topic, maybe I would skip that, but if you know nothing and you really want to kind of get into it, you can go for that. You know, even Benny Morris, who is like a despicable, disgusting, genocidal Zionist, has some very useful books too. The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem, the revisited version is the one that I have, is very useful. Rashid Khalidi, 100 Years War on Palestine is also really good. The Iron Cage by Rashid Khalidi. Israel and Palestine by Avi Shlaim, that's another very succinct book. It's only like 300 pages, provides a lot of information. That's actually where I had that anecdote of the individual in the West Bank who heard the news of Yitzhak Rabin taking over from Yitzhak Shamir and made that joke like, look, I have two shoes, I have two Yitzhaks, they do the same thing. That's from that book called Israel-Palestine by Avi Shlaim. Same thing holds true there though too. Avi Shlaim was a liberal Zionist when he wrote that. He no longer is. So if you're interested in his perspective now that he is no longer a Zionist, his memoir, Three Worlds, Memoirs of an Arab Jew, is really good. Ella Shohat has some good books on the concept of being an Arab Jew and how Zionism actually forced that false dichotomy into where people felt as though they had to choose between being an Arab or a Jew, when prior to Zionism, being an Arab Jew was just a normal thing. Like the Jews of the MENA region spoke Judeo-Arabic, they enjoyed Arabic music as well as Jewish music. It really isn't until Zionism that that false dichotomy started to become cemented. Yes, right. 10 Myths About Israel by Ilan Pappé is also a very accessible book. Oh, Nur Masala, The Expulsion of the Palestinians. That's a very, very important book to read. I think it also has a subtitle called like The Concept of Transfer in Zionist Political Thought. Oh, The Arabs: A History by Eugene Rogan. It's not just Israel-Palestine, like it's actually like a broad general history of the Arab peoples. It's a really good book. It's called like The Arabs: A History, and then you look at the guy who wrote it, and he's like the most quirked up white boy ever. It's pretty funny. Like I had a laugh when I saw that. I expected like maybe like an Arab dude who wrote it, but no, man, this is a quirked up white boy. It's a good book though. What else they got? All of those books I co-sign. Just be aware some of them are written by liberal Zionists, and you just kind of have to be able to think for yourself when you're dealing with the liberal Zionism that pops out. But just know pretty much every author I just mentioned has abandoned their liberal Zionism since they've written those books. So we're obviously right to say, let's discard the liberal Zionism bullshit that pops up in those books, because even those authors do not stand by that anymore. Benny Morris, Benny Morris is a despicable person. He's a horrible person. But The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem is actually a very useful book if you know how to contend with the information in it. It's funny because we talk about Ethan Klein and he says, that the Palestinians fled during the Nakba because Arab leaders told them to. And then you read Benny Morris, who again is a genocidal Israeli historian, despicable person who literally said that Ben-Gurion should have ethnically cleansed all of the Palestinians in 1948. You read his book, The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem, and he literally says, no, there's no proof. The Palestinians were ethnically cleansed. They did not follow calls from Arab leaders. So that genocidal historian is to the left of Ethan Klein. Anyways, this is a long-ass segment. I'm going to wrap it up. To conclude, Ethan dropped the lawsuit to avoid a formal loss because he's an egotistical loser, and the internet heavy hitters were coming out of the woodworks against him. That's it, right? And he lost to Denims, and he was losing to Noah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have requested all of these clauses in his settlement proposal that amounted to bribing Noah to glaze him and tell everyone he's actually super pro-Palestine and that he donated a bunch of money. He would have just done that out of the goodness of his heart if this theory was actually true, if Ethan had some sort of awakening and decided not to be a piece of shit. Anyways, that's the end of this segment. I have other things I want to talk about now.